Imagine being all alone, running in an endless pitch black tunnel. You're weighed down by this overwhelming sense of impending doom and despair, and your energy is draining fast. No one can hear your cries for help. You can't see any light at the end of the tunnel. This is how my corporate working life felt for me much of the time. I was running at pace through my corporate career, addicted to gathering achievements, accolades, and accumulating material things in an endless pursuit to show people I was good enough, smart enough, and a success. I was a hardworking, driven perfectionist, and I did gather a lot of achievements, accolades, and successes, but they were not bringing me any sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, and joy. Everything changed in December 2013 when, in the midst of the most sad and painful event in my life, I am awakened by a dash of joy. It's December 2013. I've just completed an energizing sunrise run through a beautiful remote village in northern India, and my mobile phone buzzes. The caller display shows Dad Mob calling. This is my father, my superhero, someone who always had my back no matter what, and someone who could always make me smile in an instant. I excitedly answered the call. "Hey Dad, how's your holiday going?" But it was not my father. It was my aunt calling from my father's mobile phone to share some news I did not expect to hear. My father had died of a heart attack in the middle of his sleep at the age of 67, while on a remote holiday retreat with my mother in his birth home of Kenya. On hearing the news, I felt crushed with intense sadness, pain, and disbelief, like it was smashing down on me with unimaginable force. I was heartbroken, but needed to be strong to function for the sake of my family. Now, anybody listening to this that has experienced grief from the sudden loss of a loved one will know how quickly it can sweep you into its darkness. On the flight to Kenya, I had my sons sleeping on me on either side. In my head, I'm asking my father, "Why did you leave us? Why did you give up and not fight?" I'm overwhelmed with a flow of emotions from sadness to anger to worry, and in the throes of the grief there comes a sudden calmness, as if my father was putting his arms around me, holding me while whispering to me, "It will all make sense and everything will work out." His funeral ceremony was in a hall filled with what looked like a sea of people who had turned up to pay their respects. There was a growing queue of people waiting to come up to us to offer their condolences. Literally every person who came up to me shared a moving story that I'd never heard before about times my father had inspired such joy, laughter, and optimism in them that it had made a lasting impact on their own outlook on life. I discovered that my father had been the humble source of empowerment for so many people, enabling them to cause breakthroughs in studies, business, marriage, and relationships. Some joked and called him their joy guru. Now, the word guru in Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages in the world and the primary sacred language of Hinduism, means the dispeller of darkness. And this is exactly what followed as more and more people shared their stories about my father. The energy and mood in the hall visibly shifted from somber and dark to an alive and vibrant energy. Even my mother, who up until then had been quiet, numbed by the loss of her soulmate, the love of her life, a man she had been with since her 20s. They did everything together. They were inseparable. And now her face was lit up with a smile. The darkness in the hall was dispelled by a dash of joy in the moment. While delivering my eulogy, I looked at a picture of my father that was projected behind me with 1946-2013 written below. See, the whole of my father's life was reduced to his birth year and the year he died, with a dash in between. Something started to open up for me. I had this elevated feeling of positivity and a surge of blissful energy. I'd only previously experienced the same on occasions when you'd normally expect such feelings, like the birth of my 2 sons and marrying my teenage sweetheart. But this was my father's funeral. So the next stage of the funeral ceremony was the Hindu cremation ritual, which I had not previously experienced in its traditional form. My younger brother and I were guided by a Hindu priest to walk 3 times round the pyre. On the completion of the 3rd round, the priest hands me a flaming wooden torch and he gestures to me to light the pyre on fire. There was a stop in me, a moment of hesitation and resistance to do this. And in that pause, I once again became present to who my father showed up as in his dash of life, and how up until then, I had not been living my dash of joy. I realized that I had stopped noticing joy, and I wasn't taking any daily actions to be joyful. In that moment, I made a promise to my father. I promised to live my life in the possibility of joy and inspiring joy in others. A feeling of lightness and peace came over me. I took a deep breath and I lit the pyre on fire. Isn't it ironic that we learn our biggest lessons in adversity? Following my father's funeral, I embarked on a personal adventure, a journey of exploration, discovery, and learning about my capacity to generate joy in the moment, regardless of the circumstances. My focus shifted to unlocking the joy potential I was born with, but somehow disconnected with and deprioritized during my adult working life. I started noticing areas in my life where joy was just not present, areas where I didn't give myself permission to experience joy, and even areas where I was actually the disruptor of other people's joy. I want to share with you the 3 keys I discovered in my life that have unlocked my dash of joy. Number 1 is to listen. I never actively listened to my mother most of my life, and so we never properly experienced joy in each other's company. In fact, any listening was always filtered through my perception of her as being negative and someone who could never be pleased. I decided to take my mum out for lunch, and for over an hour, I granted her my undivided attention and actively listened to her share about her experience of life growing up, getting married, having kids. And in that one conversation, I started to see and listen to my mother as this hardworking, resilient, loving woman who had dedicated her life to the service of people she cared for and loved. She felt heard, valued, and appreciated. She was lit up. She told me how proud she was of me, and I had never heard my mother say this to me before. Granting her my unfiltered listening unlocked a dash of joy in our relationship that continues to expand to this day. So who will you grant your unfiltered listening to today and spark some joy? Number 2 of the 3 keys that have unlocked my dash of joy is to laugh. Have you been the disruptor of someone else's joy? I'm embarrassed to tell you that I almost chastised my 2 sons for laughing loudly in their room one day, and I realized when I marched into their room, they were having fun, and I killed their joy vibe in an instant. No more. I set an intention to laugh heartily more each day for no reason. Do you laugh every day? Learn from kids. Seek out humor. Laugh more each day. Number 3 is to love. Now, if I asked you to list all the things you love in your life, where on that list would you put yourself? I didn't appear on my list. I'm talking about the love and kindness you bring to the closest and most important relationship you have, the one with yourself. Sometimes we love ourselves a little bit less, and we're generally unkind to ourselves based on these perceived self-limiting beliefs from the past. Now, as a child, did you ever fail an exam or a test and you let that affect the rest of your life because you made it mean that you weren't good enough, worthy enough, smart enough? That was me, going through life, avoiding failure, seeking external validation as a way to compensate for and fix my experience of myself as I'm not good enough, which was decided by a 10-year-old version of myself. This left me unfulfilled and dissatisfied with where I was in life until I gave myself permission to accept, appreciate, and acknowledge who I am. I started practicing gratitude by keeping my own daily journal, noticing all the things I'm joyful for and love, including myself. If we practice loving ourselves more each day, being kinder to ourselves, we will naturally spread that love and kindness out into the world. That's a future worth living into now. So, I want to leave you with this inquiry. Are you listening enough? Are you laughing enough? Are you loving enough? Are you living your dash of joy?